Hello and welcome to Veteran Cinema Podcast. I'm Joe here with me, my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And today we're reviewing Wolverine Origins. Now, a lot of people might think it's strange to review a Marvel movie on this channel, especially since we have a sci-fi corner, newly established and minted, which is where we're supposed to dump all of our Marvel nonsense. But the thing about this movie is it is a sci-fi movie, but it's more of a Cold War movie. And in that regard, it should kind of be put in a corner here. Well, in this corner. Now, the movie essentially spans Wolverine's life up until he loses his memories. The initial prologue is problematic as we see Logan being, James Howlett. We see Jimmy with the death of his father and his mother and his biological father. It's done very clunkily and clumsily. Then we end up seeing the American Civil War, World War I, World War II, and parts of Vietnam War, all in a quick credits form, which that part's kind of well done.
Mm-hmm.
We learned that there was an attempt to kill them with the firing squad. They're mutants of Marvel, or at least I should say the X-Men universe. So they end up recovering easily enough. William Stryker, a military scientist, recruits them for a special series of operations wherein he's trying to look for some sort of meteor fragment one can call adamantium.
Mm-hmm.
They go through another prologue wherein, they're basically claiming it. So there's about 3 prologues. That's maybe one or two many, or two too many. And Wolverine then ends up, we find him in the Rockies, where he's, I guess, established himself with Silver Fox. How did he meet her? Don't know. Don't care, I guess. Wolverine's now a lumberjack, but trouble seeks him out in the form of William Stryker, as Sabretooth has been his half-brother has been run, or maybe his full brother. It's not exactly clear. Well, it kind of is, but who cares? They act more like they're half-brothers anyways. Victor Creed is murdering all the old members of the squad, so Wolverine has to try to track them down, get intel from them, and figure out what's going on. Along the way, he'll clash, lose a fight against Sabretooth, then go to Stryker to get adamantium skeleton. Thus, he did volunteer for the procedure, as mentioned in X2. Before he fled, as, Stryker said there must be no memory. We're going to use him as a human weapon. He flees to the Kents, the Hudsons. I like to think of this movie as also a good origin story movie for Wolverine in the comics, because the comic book origin story was garbage, and it's one of the worst written stories I've ever read in my entire life. And I wish I had my 2 hours back of reading back. That was back 15 years ago, and I honestly hated every second of it. It was terrible. It was terrible, I tell you. But this movie does all of that way better, even though there are problems.
Yeah.
And at least it didn't muck it up like the cartoons did. The cartoons seemed confused about what they wanted to do with it. At least here, they knew what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And even the comic book seemed confused. So, yeah, everything is clear here. I like to think of the Hudsons, though, as James Hudson's actual parents.
Yes.
And that this is why he's an orphan or something in the comics. So that you can basically watch this movie and then go into Alpha Flight. Starting with Alpha Flight issue 1 and the second generation of X-Men, I think in issue 94 of Uncanny X-Men from 1975, so that this is a good jump-on point for the comic books. That's how I like to look at this movie. Now, Wolverine, or James Howlett, I should say, Howlett ends up killing off Agent Zero, ends up clashing with Sabretooth, and clashing with Stryker to an extent before, now Deadpool I actually like that he has his tongue essentially ripped out. To be honest, Deadpool in the comics always annoyed me. I never liked Deadpool.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted them to kill him off eventually, because the whole fourth wall breaking, I never liked that humor, and the character doesn't have a character outside of that. He's essentially a Garfield character, except Garfield's funny and Deadpool is not.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, at the beginning of the movie, William Stryker says, if you didn't have that mouth on you, Wade, you'd be the perfect soldier. Hinting at the fact that he'd give anything to remove Deadpool's ability to speak and even think, which he does by the end of the movie.
That is something that needs to remain consistent. William Stryker wanted to shut him up.
So he did. Now, the thing is, in the comics, the idea of Deadpool is he's invincible, he's a god, and nothing can harm him, and nor should anyone who is capable of harming him ever harm him. Because the fans are more protective of him than most fathers are of their daughters. No offense, guys. I really don't have any respect for Deadpool as a character. I really don't. I hate him. So, yeah. This movie, best portrayal of Deadpool I've ever seen in my life. And the most realistic. That said, the thing I didn't like was Sabretooth and Wolverine actually teaming up to kill him. Because that doesn't make sense. They hate each other now. Why would they team up? So, in that regard, it's inconsistent there. And, yeah. The movie concludes, though, after Wolverine becomes Wolverine, wherein James is shot in the head with an adamantium bullet that causes brain damage, but because of his healing factor, his brain recovers, but without the memories. And Stryker is then not mind-controlled, but somewhat manipulated by Silver Fox's mutant abilities into walking till his feet bleed, and then keep on walking. And, yeah, like, this movie does a great job building up to X2, and if you remove certain bits and play around with the movie a little, it can work as an origin story for the comic book Wolverine. And it's really tragic how James Howlett in this movie is way smarter than Wolverine, for example, in the comics or in most portrayals outside X-Men Evolution, where he is smart, but you can replace him with a potted plant in that show for all the relevance he has to it. As the creators of X-Men Evolution really didn't care about the character, which is a shame.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Wolverine in the comics can be fun, but he can also be sometimes one note. James Howlett is a far more interesting and complex character. He actually does use strategy and tactics, something Wolverine in the comics and in the cartoons is generally completely incapable of. So, yeah, that's where this movie is at. It's not a great movie, but it's not a terrible movie. It's not even a bad movie. It has its good points. I mean, Xavier, seeing him in a cameo role is really fun. That's a good cameo. It's not the forced hammer at the end of a Hulk movie or something, which is just, or a Cap movie, which is just, come on, really? You're taking the point, beating it over our heads that this is a shared universe. This movie doesn't do that as much, I find. Yes, Xavier does show up, and he does play a heroic role. We see him interfere with Stryker's plans to an extent, in that he's the one who lures the mutants over to him. Now, I didn't like that Cyclops was in this movie, but I did like that we did see him join Xavier. I would have liked it had they made him younger, maybe like a 5 or 6 year old.
Yes, and I thought also make Gambit a little younger.
Or maybe replace Gambit with his adoptive father.
Yes,
and
Jean-Luc.
And show Rami at maybe 3 or 4 years old.
As one of the mutants that were essentially rescued.
And that Jean-Luc broke in and broke out on his own. And that would be... Now, he's not a mutant, but that would be a great setup for a Gambit movie. And the actor they did cast for Gambit could have been used instead in a Gambit movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then they could have had... Well, they could have brought back a rogue actress into the Gambit movie as his love interest. And the thing is, they could have also put in Storm into that factory that Stryker was pretty much at, or prison, I should say, and use her as... Well, this could also help set up a Storm movie. I actually think that Wolverine 2, the movie, is one of the worst superhero movies of all times. as is the third one, Logan. That movie's terrible. If you want to make a Western, make a freaking Western, not whatever the hell that was. And that Wolverine 2 should have been a Storm movie. We were robbed, I tell you, of a Storm movie. Now, this movie, though, in terms of showing the character's trauma, we do see a few scenes, such as Logan waking up from, or James Howlett waking up from his nightmare of the wars. As well, throughout the movie, trauma seems to dog James. Mm-hmm. Now, we also see in the prologue one thing I did like. Sabretooth, as they were going through all the wars, began to lose himself in them and take more and more savage pleasure in things like mass murder, rape, cannibalism, and whatnot. Cannibalism being hinted at. Whereas James took less and less pleasure and became more and more distraught and desirous of a simpler life. So that we see the growing divergence in the two and how similar they could be, just in their abilities, but how they took two different paths. Stryker, though, seems to act like Mephistopheles in this movie as a kind of devil, which, honestly, that's how he was set up in X2. In X2, well, in this 4-part X-Men movie, if you start with Origins, then go to Wolverine, well, X-Men, then X2, then X3, the most evil villain is William Stryker. I mean, that scene in the second movie where he wheels in his son after having lobotomized him, and Xavier goes, "My God, William, this is your son!" That is a great scene, and it's one of the most horrifying.
Yeah, it's practically a horror movie.
Yeah. Now,
and one thing that I seem to have noticed is that after Logan left that unit,
it broke apart.
It broke apart because
the thing is, they're all scared of leaving. They're all traumatized, I think. But seeing James do it gave them the courage to do so. And it's confirmed by the teleporter guy, whom I like that it's the black guy who's really the Jiminy Cricket. And the thing is, I know a lot of people will find that forced, but actually, I'm just saying, most black men I've run into in real life have been really great guys. And we've had two of them who've been our best friends. Mm-hmm. One of them passed away last year, sadly. The other one is still with us, thankfully. And hey, shout out to you. But the thing is, I'm just saying, like in North America, this is often the case where black men are frequently really nice guys. Mm-hmm. So this movie is basically playing into that.
And I just remembered his name. It's Vanisher.
Yeah, great character.
Great character. Yes, blackwash, but done in a good way.
Yeah. And occasionally it can be well done. Now, you shouldn't make a practice of it.
But this is a case where it didn't matter.
They could have brought in a white Vanisher later on in another movie if they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't matter.
The actor did the job.
He did such a great job. I'd have liked to see him in another couple of movies. If anyone knows his name and can tell us any of his the rest of his filmography, please do in the comments. We'd love to see this guy some more of this guy's movies. Anyways, let's rate this movie. I'm going to say it's a 2.
2.5. It's very enjoyable.
So you find it above average?
Yeah, it's not the primary X movies,
but I find it's a 2. It's a good mediocre movie. It's average.
Mm-hmm. It's like people make such a big deal about what happened with Deadpool.
Who cares? He deserved it, and it's better done than how he's presented in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, but invincible characters don't appeal to me.
Agreed.
So
toss them down the chimney stack.
Yes. Anyways, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel, or channels at this point, because we're trying to get each to 1,000 subscribers, and we greatly appreciate your help in doing that. So until next time, Excelsior, my X-Men.